So if zip codes don't determine your child's success, then what does? So let's talk. I'm Chantel Modeste, and I'm your favorite teacher. I have a friend who always calls and texts and inbox me about different problems that's going on at school, and she seeks my advice on how to navigate helping her child in school. And she always refers to me as her favorite teacher. So I will too be your favorite teacher. But anyway, I wasn't planning on even doing this talk today, but I was reading as I'm preparing for a 5-day launch, a challenge for parents who are seeking guidance on how to navigate and make sure their child is succeeding and being successful in school. And as I prepare, as with anything, you need to be reading. Any preparation that I do, whether it's speaking engagement, a blog post, a YouTube video, you have to read. You have to put something. I always tell my daughter's 13, Madeline, and I always tell her you have to put something in your mind, and that's through words and through reading. And so as I'm preparing for this challenge is how to awaken the natural genius in your child challenge. That's coming up in a few days. At the time of this video, if you see this, I'm not sure if the challenge would have passed, and hopefully I have another challenge next month. But depending on when you watch this video, whether or not the challenge has happened, but it will happen January the 16th through the 20th, next week. So anyways, I'm preparing for what I plan to share with my parents. I ran across the same information that I often run across as an educator as I read on the stats and the latest and the trends in education. And there the sentence was making reference to the achievement gap. And I often don't like to use the word achievement gap. I prefer opportunity gaps. I think our children have an opportunity gap. There's missed opportunities many times where children just don't have opportunities as some other children do. So I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with students who are failing and who are not succeeding in school and in class. But anyway, I prefer opportunity, and I even prefer the wisdom gap. That's me personally. Believing that there's a lack of wisdom that's being learned and attained by students in classrooms. Wisdom meaning what they're learning, they're able to now apply that to their real life situations. It's applicable. They can use whatever they learn in science, whatever math, or whatever readings that they're engaging in to apply that to their everyday lives. But anyway, that's wisdom gap. But anyway, the achievement gap is often discussed and talked about in educational circles. Why children are behind, why 65% of American kids can't read, and why that number is even worse, students who can't write, and math is not much better. But there was the sentence that I knew was coming. And the achievement gap, we contribute and always understand the achievement gaps in terms of poverty and low-income students. There it was. But that implies that students who are successful by way of what their parents have and by way of zip codes. And, zip codes kind of determine the levels of economic status in our society. So that's why I thought, let's talk about zip codes and going deeper into what kids that have means and financial access to things that children of lesser means don't. But I try not to really play into that because I believe there's more to it than just that. If students are struggling across the board, and they are, despite their race and their location of where they live, and what they have access to, is more to it than that. And so I thought I would just kind of share and talk to you about, there are things that parents can do that might not have access to those things that kids that are in those zip codes. So there are three things that I believe that trumps and is more important than where a child lives and their financial means. And the first one is, which is free. These things are free. You can do yourself. It doesn't take any money. It doesn't take the ability to go hire a tutor or the ability to put your child in a program, an enrichment program. The first one is just interest. That is free. You giving your child the natural inclination to be interested, truly interested in something. When you take them to the park, when you go out to the store, when you pick up something, and I think about going to the park and how you can teach them right there classification, in science. How do you categorize and classify different elements in nature? That's free. Parks are free. There's no charge to go to a park. Last I checked, unless you're at a theme park or some other type of park that actually literally does charge. But your local park is free. You drive there and you can teach your child how to classify the flowers, how to classify the rocks, and give them that verbiage, that language. So I try not to, and when I talk to parents, I try to share with them, try to do these things that are free, readily available in your home. When you're cooking, give them the interest to come in the kitchen with you and measure that half a cup of water or oil or milk, whatever it's taken that you're using to bake your favorite cake. I love baking pound cake. So I try to drag Madeline in and we talk about the measurements. That's free. That's in your, we all have that. We're cooking. We're providing food and nutrition for our family. So just the ability to be able to, because I believe, on any platform that I'm speaking on, whether it's this YouTube platform, whether it's my podcast, whether it's me writing through blogging, providing information and sharing things to parents in my Facebook group, whatever I'm doing, my goal, my task is to teach parents how to be your child's first teacher. As cliche as that sounds, you're your child's first teacher, but you really are. They learn what's important. They follow you. They learn, going back to cooking, they learn what to eat. They learn nutritional habits. They learn study habits. They learn all those things because you have them more than their teacher. May not seem like it, but they're with you more than they are with their teacher. So I try to make that connection of what we do as parents. We are the true role models for our kids. So I'm always intentional about how I speak about things, how I talk about things around my daughter. So that's free. That takes no zip code needed for any of that. So just providing that interest. And then the second thing that we need to be providing or instilling in our children is just motivation. That motivation to want to read, to want to study and go deeper. I remember when my daughter and I went to see Black Panther, the latest rendition of the Black Panther movie. And as we were watching, I was just saying, look at that young girl in there. I said, she's a scientist. Remember the end of, for those I know we've all probably seen Wakanda Forever by now. But the girl that was from MIT, I said, she's a scientist. I said, look at her, how she created. So I'm always pulling and bringing attention to and trying to help motivate my daughter. So when she cracks open her physics book and when she's looking at, so remember that girl from the Black Panther movie? She's a scientist, and you too can be a scientist too if you choose to. If you're persistent, if you're hard work, if you study, and if you read. So I'm always constantly trying to connect those dots for her. So just that interest, motivation. And then the last thing needed for our success for students is dedication. So we need to be dedicated and committed to doing all these things. I sometimes think about how there's always stats that shows how kids, as the older they get, the less likely they want to read. Well, one of the ways we can avoid that is just putting it into our schedule and sticking to that schedule. Things happened. I know sometimes I have on our schedule to read from and study from 4 to 6, and then I need to run to the store and get things for dinner. Okay, so that day we didn't read from 4 to 6, but I pushed it back and we did read another set of time and hours later on in that day. But it takes dedication and commitment to make sure that you're building on those interests, that you're building on whatever it is that motivates your child. And you need to talk to your children and figure out, well, what is it that motivates your child? I do homeschool. I teach my daughter. I have my own school, so I teach her. And we're together all day, every day. I can remember the number of hours that parents who homeschooled, I read somewhere. It's a lot of hours. I mean, basically 24 hours a day. I'm with my kid every day, all day. And so I did an interest inventory to get to know my other students in my school. And Madeline's part of my school, so she took the interest inventory as well. And some of the things she wrote on there, I was surprised. I didn't even know. And I'm with her all day long. I thought, you like this? I didn't know that. She often talks about being a veterinarian. I'm like, are you sure you want to be a veterinarian? We have a cat. And I don't know if that's why she wants to be a veterinarian or she really, truly wants to be a veterinarian. So I'm trying to go, and my husband, he went out and went to Amazon and bought her a book that teaches about the bones of animals. I mean, it's a pretty difficult book, but we did crack it open. I tried to talk her through it, and it's right there on her table, on her desk. And so when she's truly ready for it, it's there. But I planted that seed in her. And I did open it up. We kind of looked at it, and it's pretty complex, high tech stuff in that book. So I don't know if it's necessarily for college students who are already in veterinary school, but my husband just did it, just wanted to help. And I thought, well, but it's a way to challenge her. You know, I try not to dumb down anything. I try to raise high expectations for her. And I try not to assume that she won't and can't actually read and be interested in that book. But if it's there for her, it's there. Okay? So just, you know, back to that, just dedication, you know, whether it's reading every day, you need to be committed to doing whatever it is that you're doing to make sure that your child is succeeding. You know, just the most important thing that we can do as parents is to give our child confidence. Give our children confidence. I'll never forget, I read a book, I think it's titled Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. And there was a section in the book that talks about how the royal family, how they train their young children to be confident and to not to be afraid. You know, the royal family over in England. And he said they would strategically place the children in situations where they would win. They would rig the game for their children. And whoever's training them, I don't know, you know, whoever's training these children to raise them to be, you know, the royal family, their help, or whoever's doing the training and teaching. And they would put the children in situations where they would win. They would rig it to where they would make it so easy for them to where they would win. And so that's one step of them slowly building that confidence in them, because they're thinking, man, this is easy. And so every time, whether it was a game or, I don't know, maybe some academic challenge, they would make it so simple to where slowly they're building the belief in their children that they can do anything. And I thought, man, you know, I just love kind of reading about secrets of success, and you see people on TV and you wonder, wow, they're well-rounded and, you know, they have it going on in all these ways, but there's strategy behind it. There's strategy. I always tell my daughter, she came home the other day and said a little boy in her class, she goes out for what's called co-op. I teach her here, but then I'm always trying to find other ways to enrich and give her more. And so she takes Latin. I don't teach Latin in my school. Latin is embedded in our curriculum, but it's a standalone Latin class. She took Spanish standalone last year. So I want her to have a second language under her belt as early as possible. As early, you know, young as your children are, it's a sponge. They're learning. It's easier to learn something new the younger they are. So anyway, she's taking Latin, and some little boy in the class was just giving answers. Teacher's asking a question, he's raising his hand, answering a question, answering a question. And finally, someone in the class said, so how do you know so much? And the kid said, because the teacher said, okay, you can't answer any more questions. Can anyone else answer any of these questions? And so another girl said, how do you know so much? And the kid said, well, I read. Just those two words. He said, I read. And, you know, if you kind of listen to some of our billionaires, and sometimes I know they're eccentric and do weird things, and but if you kind of peel the layers back of the secret to their success, they'll tell you they read. They read a book a week. They read a book a day, but they read. And so I told her, I said, see, he reads. That's why he knows those answers. He's reading the assignments before school, before the day that you guys meet and talk about this lesson. You know, this is not hard. The library is full of books. The library is one place that I go to and I love going, and there's not many people there. If you want to go somewhere that's not packed, that's free. Those libraries are open from 10 in the morning to 9 at night, 10 to 5 on Saturdays and Sundays. No one's there. So you have your choice of books. You don't have to fight over it. You don't have to pay for it. Check it out. Keep it for 3 to 4 weeks. Turn it back in. Recheck it out 2, 3 times. Sometimes I keep books 3 weeks, another 3 weeks, another 3 weeks. I think it's 3 times you can check books out. Some libraries charge and some just will hold, but not like checking your books out till you turn it back in. But my point is that takes no, financial advantage to do that. You know, kind of going back to my original point of this video and this conversation here, is that we can't keep looking at what our kids don't have. What do we have? Just kind of changing how we look at things, our perception of what we see that we have access to. So it's a mindset. And that's one of the things that I'll talk about in my 5-day challenge, how to awaken the natural genius child, is for, I want parents to walk away with changing their mindset about their children. What makes them shine? What makes them glow? You know, what kind of makes them tick? You know, when do they light up? You know, but you have to, as a parent, we have to put those things in front of them. You know, what are the interests? What are the motivations? But as parents, we have to be dedicated to making sure that we stick with it and help lead the way for them, because they're not going to do it on their own. And I'm not talking just 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds. I'm talking about our high school kids. I'm talking about our college students. I'm talking about all levels. They need us, especially around those middle and high school years. So I'm saying my daughter changed. She's having new interest. She's a girl. And I'm like, man. But I'm trying to follow her interest and appeal to her, like, oh, she likes, you know, talking about hair and braids and all these different things. So let's go get some library books that talks about that. Let's look at some videos. YouTube has so many videos for kids. Let me poke that interest. Okay, that takes nothing but time and effort on my part. We all have access to YouTube. We have access to all these ways of learning. There's no shortage of knowledge. Okay, we have a lot of shortage of a lot of things, but knowledge is not, it's not a shortage of that. Information is everywhere. But going back to what I believe is the most important and the hugest gap in achievement for kids is, do we have the wisdom to utilize that knowledge? Utilize it for good. Utilize it to impact, to influence others. What are we doing with that knowledge? I see a lot of people in our society, they're smart, they have financial means, but what are they doing with that? For the good of others? Who are they serving? So anyway, I just woke up and I was thinking about this, and I saw, as I was reading, like I said, you know, as you prepare, you know, reading, my books were everywhere. I have this book, I have this book. And so I just thought, here we go again, you know, just the achievement gap, you know, there's all these stats, and I read it all the time, and I've read it for years as I've studied education and the achievement of students, and how it's broken down by demographics, by race, by gender, and many, many times the divide, the reason being that contributes, according to many of these educational researchers and educational journalists, are the fact that they are living in poverty. And I've worked at schools, and I can attest and tell you that those kids are the most hungry. They want to learn. I just remember I had a student who, I always think about my student Keith. And there were times when he would miss class, he would miss school, and he would tell me, he says, Modeste, my parents got into a fight and I was up all night, and, but kids are resilient. Other than the fact that he didn't come to class, I wouldn't have known that unless, he shared that with me. But I have a principal who believed in kids. He didn't see he didn't see a poverty-stricken child. He didn't see those things. He saw potential. He saw children who needed to be poured into, and that's how he led the school. And I remember he was sharp. That kid was sharp as he wanted to be. He was smart. So he was able to turn that off. He was in a safe place at school. So from 8 to 3, he was safe. He felt loved. He was fed. And so all those things that happened. Now, what happened after school, I don't know. So during that time, I just treated him as a student who deserved to be taught and who needed to be read to, who needed to know how to write to prevent that cycle that was happening in his family at home. So sometimes it's a danger, I think, in looking at students as students who are low income, and kind of hear that verbiage, low income students from poverty. At that point, you are now labeling that child, and so now you see that child as that. But I like to see the child as a blank slate that needs to be filled with knowledge. So anyway, I'll go on a tangent with that, and I'm not. So anyway, thank you for listening today. I just want to jump in and talk about zip codes and how they really don't determine success of your child, your financial situation. You have the ability to provide the interest, the motivation, and the dedication to what they do. And I hope this will inspire you to start looking at your children in a different light. How, and I challenge you to think about how can you today start to dig a little deeper into what their interests are and how you can motivate them, because you know your child better than any teacher. You know your child better than anyone. So you are at an advantage. Your child is at an advantage because they have you as their mom or their dad. So if it's not too late, whenever you see this video, I do have a challenge, and it's in my bio and information, how to awaken the natural genius in your child. I'll talk a little bit more about ways you can do this with your child, books you can use, and other means to make sure that you're capable and equipped to help your child be successful and the confident kid that you know them to be. So until next time, stay blessed, and I hope you have a great day. Make it a good one, and we'll talk soon.